As we just said, precise motivation for the killing of Charlie Kirk still not clear, but Conservatives already choosing to frame it as a broader assault by the left on the right. Instances of political violence in recent years driven in part by sharp polarization along party lines. In the first half of this year alone, some 150 politically motivated attacks have been recorded. That's nearly twice the number from the same period last year. Between the storming of the Capitol on January 6, 2021 by pro-Trump supporters and the president's second electoral victory in November 2024, at least 300 cases of political violence have been recorded, the most significant surge since the 1970s. Our targets have spanned the political spectrum, including diplomats, law enforcement, judges and elected officials and their families. In 2022, the husband of former U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, a Democrat, was attacked at home. That same year, conservative-leaning Justice Brett Kavanaugh was the target of an attempted assassination. In June this year, a Democratic Minnesota state lawmaker and her husband were shot dead by a Christian nationalist. Donald Trump himself faced 2 assassination attempts last year, one in July when a gunman shot his ear during a campaign rally, another in September when a man with a rifle staked out the American leader's Florida golf course with a rifle. His criminal trial starts today. Analysts blame a convergence of factors, including a mix of economic insecurity, anxiety over shifting racial and ethnic demographics, and the increasingly incendiary tone of political discourse. It's combining to deepen traditional ideological divides, amplified by social media and conspiracy theories. And for more, I have with me here Steve Okun, founder and CEO of APAC Advisors. Thanks for coming in this evening, Mr. Okun. We just saw the various factors increasing this divide between, we do not like to use terms like left and right, but as a convenience, left and right. Are we just imagining it now, or are things really worse now than they had been, say, a decade ago?
Things are worse now than they were a decade ago, 2 decades ago. Things are worse now than they were even 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, the amount of threats against members of Congress since 2017 has more than doubled year on year. And so we have a serious political violence problem in the United States. It is because, as you said, part of it is caused by changing demographics. People are very uncertain of where they're going to be in the United States. Could be along racial lines. So you have those concerns. You have concerns of what this president is doing, the rights he is taking away from certain Americans that is fueling this type of violence. So you have violence coming from both sides. There's no sign that this is going to get any better. And when you have the president in the Oval Office making the address he made today, he's not trying to calm things down either.
All right, that address today, 4 minutes. There was a written statement and then a video, a 4-minute-long clip posted on his social media site in which he pointed to, and this we ran earlier, violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those who do not agree with you. That would apply to left and right, or it should apply to left and right.
Well, it could apply to left and right. And I think to take a step back to see where the president is, you have to understand who Charlie Kirk is. He is arguably as important to Donald Trump's victory this year as anybody was in his campaign. Charlie Kirk, over the last 10 years or so, has built up, in Donald Trump's words, a grassroots army. And that army came out in favor of Donald Trump. And that army is an army predominantly, it's young people, predominantly young men. And young men tend to not vote. But Charlie Kirk got them to vote. And Donald Trump won young men this year by 56 points. He lost it by 41 points to Joe Biden. So you can see why Donald Trump sees this as an attack on him, because Charlie Kirk is a big reason why he won. But Donald Trump takes this attack on Kirk and on him, and then he says that this is because of the radical left, and we only have violence from the radical left. And when Donald Trump walks through in the Oval Office the violence that occurred, he was accurate when he said the violence against him in Butler, Pennsylvania, the assassination of Kirk, the shooting of Steve Scalise, the Louisiana congressman, back in 2017. Those are all correct. He left off all the attacks against Democrats. He left off the murder of the woman who was a state representative in Minnesota this year. He left off the attack on Paul Pelosi, then Speaker Pelosi's husband. He left off the attempted murder of my friend Gabrielle Giffords, the then Congresswoman from Arizona, in 2011. So Donald Trump only says this problem is on the left. Donald Trump says we are going to do something about this radical left violence. He shouldn't have said that. What he should have said is we have to do something about the violence that we have in the United States. And so my fear is that it could actually worsen things when he talks about needing to end this violence.
Donald Trump is one man. He may be the president, but he's just... So we have George W. Bush coming out to say members of other political parties are not our enemies. They are our fellow citizens. So we've heard that from former presidents, Obama, Mr. Biden, as well as George W. Bush and Congressman Lindsey Graham, Gavin Newsom. So there have been broader, more balanced, arguably, statements from other leaders and former leaders. But the House of Representatives, that tone there pretty much echoes what we have heard from President Trump.
Well, look, the president is what matters. Yeah, and look, you had the Republican governor of Utah where the murder occurred today. He said this is a problem on the left and the right. So you have Republicans in power today in state government. You have former presidents like George W. Bush, who are Republicans, saying this is a societal problem. But they're not the president of the United States. And the president of the United States is not saying we have a societal problem. He says we have a problem with the radical left. And that's only half the story, if it's even half the story. We can argue that point. But let's just say it is half the story. You've got to address the whole story. And when the president of the United States has the Justice Department under his control, when he has the military under his control, when he has got the National Guard, which he is using, under his control, you could see where this is going to get worse, not better. And we all hope it doesn't. Well, I would say most Americans hope that we do not see a worsening. But when you read what is being said, you have to consider that could be an outcome of what occurred today.
All right. The actual levers of power there available to the U.S. president. But in a way, when you use language, which we have heard not just from Mr. Trump, but also from his closest aides, that sets the tone for what is acceptable in public discourse and in public action. And what are we hearing in terms of rhetoric and language in a U.S. political system? Well,
that's the question is, what is the response going to be from the administration? Is there going to be a political response? And Donald Trump said in his address that we were going to go after those who fund and support the radical left. So does that mean that he is going to use the Justice Department, use law enforcement to take action against people who are engaged in political speech? And that is something that could really lead to more violence from the left if they believe their rights are being taken away from them. And so it's why what the president says, and really, more importantly, what is the president going to do? What is his response going to be? Is he going to have a response that is limited to rhetoric, or is he going to have a response that uses governmental action? And that would be a very different situation than we've ever really been in the United States when we had this level of political violence back in the 70s, in the era of Watergate and the era of the Vietnam War, which fed a lot of that violence, especially Vietnam.
If this is a societal problem, what problem might that be, and how might one address it?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of issues that are going to be very difficult to address that the United States hasn't been able to address at all. There's the issue, one, of rising income inequality. That is an issue that could be causing some of this violence. We see a change in demographics where the white majority that used to be in power is losing some of that as the U.S. gets more diverse. Well, those people who lose power, they want to make sure that they're treated fairly, and they may believe they're not being treated fairly. That could lead to violence as well. So you have all of these societal tensions, and we haven't even talked about yet AI. And what is AI going to do when AI starts to take jobs away from people in this situation where we already have income inequality? The jobs AI is going to take away, they're going to be at the start, at the lower end of the income brackets. That could lead to more violence. The United States is doing nothing. Well, I don't know if any country is, but certainly the United States is not doing anything right now to figure out how are we going to prevent AI from making our problems even worse. And then you have social media, and you have a split up of the mainstream media. There are so many issues that are causing the rise in political violence, and we aren't addressing literally any of them as a country right now.
All right, unable to manage current disruptions, and we have a huge disruptor in the form of artificial intelligence. Thanks so much for coming to join us this evening, Steve Okun, founder and CEO of APAC Advisors.